Hey there, everyone. What is going on? Lauren Sisler here with AL.com. Happy Monday to you. Hope you had a wonderful Valentine's Day weekend, celebrating with your loved ones, your friends, whomever, because it's all about love, right? And hey, someone we love on this show very much, Tom Green, our Auburn beat reporter, hanging out on the plains. I guess you're on the plains. I don't know. I can just assume that. But in this virtual world, who knows where you're at these days?
I'm still here in Auburn, holding down the fort.
Holding down the fort. Well, that's good to know. Hey, big news coming out this morning, and just announced that Gus Malzahn is now the new head football coach of Central Florida. Just want to get your thoughts on that. What do we know about this hire, and what are your thoughts on him getting this job? Is this a good landing spot for Gus Malzahn?
I think it's a great landing spot for Gus Malzahn. I mean, short of, certain ACC or Big 12 jobs opening up this cycle, I think this is about as good of a landing spot he could have asked for. He's going from a SEC program where he was going against, one of the toughest schedules in the nation every year, to one of the top group of 5 programs in the country, a team that's won at least 10 games in 3 of the last 4 seasons, with 3 top 25 finishes in that span, including 2 in the top 11. UCF, it's certainly a program that's been on the rise, the last several years. Gus Malzahn knows that firsthand from having faced them in the Peach Bowl back in 2017. It's a program that's got resources. You're recruiting the state of Florida still. It's got a lot of talent on that roster, and there's also the familiarity factor because, UCF's new athletics director was the athletics director at Arkansas State during Gus Malzahn's 1 season there in 2012. So really, I think, this is almost an ideal situation for Gus. I was really curious the last month or two whether he would, want to, just take a back seat and sit out a year and kind of assess things and see how the job market opens up. But, this opportunity just seemed, ripe for him.
Yeah, I was definitely interested, when the news came down last night that was the expectation, or that he'd been offered the job, kind of wondering, like, is he going to sit out a little while? Is he going to take his time with this? But, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's a good landing spot. Certainly the weather's nice down there. And who doesn't want to head over to Disney and Universal for some fun in the sun? And obviously, season passes. You gotta get down with that. And I know they got the grandkids, so that'll be something fun for them to do on a regular basis when he's not coaching. But obviously, that won't be often. But nevertheless, So I want to get into Auburn's schedule. That was released not too long ago, and I kind of want to break that down. Patrick, go ahead and pop up the schedule here as we sort of break down things for the 2021 college football season. And like most seasons, and at least in recent years, Auburn's schedule is shaping up to be a pretty difficult one. Just wanted to get some highlights from you, Tom, and what your overall thoughts were when this schedule was released.
Well, I think, one of the first things that's really noticeable is, it's a pretty favorable start for Brian Harsin in his first season. Auburn opens the year with 4 straight non-conference games. They haven't done that in ages. They really have 2 kind of gimmies, warm-ups there against Akron and Alabama State at home to kind of feel things out, knock out some of the kinks before, their first early test there, one of those marquee non-conference matchups of the college football season with that trip to Penn State in the middle of September. I'm not sure how good Penn State's going to be this year. I know they had a rough year, but, it's kind of hard to, gauge how some teams did just given all the circumstances of the 2020 season. But, really, you should expect coming out of September, heading in SEC play at, 4-0 at best, 3-1 at worst, you would think, with that Penn State game followed by Georgia State at home. But, man, that start to the SEC schedule is going to be brutal for them. They travel to LSU, where they haven't won more than 20 years. And then you have Georgia at home. That's a pretty tough 1-2 punch to open things in SEC play. So it's going to get really real quick for Brian Harsin.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's going to be, 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds. And, of course, even the Arkansas game you look at, so you got LSU, Georgia, and then Arkansas, and they're at Arkansas. And I'll tell you, obviously, we saw what happened last year, a very close game, and some – would believe that it should have gone in Arkansas's favor. But Sam Pittman's got that program turned around. So, heading into that bye week, they're certainly going to have their hands full in those 3 games before they get into that final stretch with Ole Miss and Texas A&M, of course, being on the road. And then South Carolina is certainly not an easy place to play. But, of course, getting Alabama back at home, always a good thing. And I'm sure Harsin will at least appreciate that. aspect of things, getting to play Alabama for his first time, getting that christening, if you will, at home in the confines of Jordan-Hare Stadium. Now, when you look at that schedule, I know you kind of said off the top, in theory, 3-1 coming, out of the gates, possibly 4-0 if they can get a win against Penn State. What, in your opinion, are the should-win games for Auburn? Like, when you look at that schedule, what games are you saying they should absolutely win, or at least have a pretty good shot at winning this year, based on what you know about this team and what they have coming back?
Well, I think certainly, 3 of those 4 non-conference games that we spoke about, Akron, Alabama State, Georgia State. Then you look at, Penn State, that one can go either way. I think a lot of it, is really going to depend on, how Auburn looks early in the season, just getting adjusted to Brian Harsin's scheme, Derek Mason's defense.
Yep.
But then also just what the situation is going to be like with attendance in stadiums this fall. I mean, Penn State is not going to be an easy place to play if it's packed to the gills. So I think that's going to factor into it. But obviously, you have those 3 wins early in non-conference play. And then you look at that SEC schedule, I think the games that they really, should be able to win, the Ole Miss, Mississippi State, South Carolina, and probably the Arkansas game too. I know Arkansas is on the rise, but I still think Auburn is a more talented roster top to bottom. But then, the rest of that schedule is just difficult. I mean, you got obviously 3 teams that finished last season ranked in the top 8, the defending national champion, Alabama, your rival Georgia, and at LSU, which is a place that's just tormented that program for the last 2 decades plus. Those are going to be 3 really difficult games, plus the Texas A&M game. Obviously, Texas A&M, that other team that finished in the top 8 last year. Good thing for Auburn is that they've never lost at Kyle Field yet. So that is
good news. Yes,
they got that going for them. They got Georgia and Alabama at home. Again, I think a lot of that's going to depend on what the crowd factor is going to be in Jordan-Hare Stadium this fall. I think realistically, you look at a 7-5 or an 8-4 season in Brian Harsin's first year as a real success and something to build off of. I don't think anybody really has championship expectations going into this season. They know it's going to be a process as Brian Harsin works to get all, everything that he wants in the right place. But I think 7-5, 8-4 with a pretty solid bowl game, I think would be considered a success in year 1 for Brian Harsin.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. So obviously, when you look at that schedule, I think that if they can get a win or 2 of the more competitive games, like you said, if they could go on the road and get that win at LSU, or get a win against Georgia, of course, like you said, I think Ole Miss and Mississippi State and South Carolina, if they can get those 3, notch those as 3 wins, that would certainly be heading in a positive direction. But I'm with you. I think that a 7-win season, potentially 8 with the bowl game, would certainly be a good first year for Coach Harsin, most certainly, especially here in the SEC West. Okay, so spring ball starting Tuesday, March 16th. That, of course, according to the Twitter feed. I don't know. I haven't seen anything come down from Auburn just yet that's been confirmed. But we think it's March 16th, according to that Twitter release, right, that spring ball is starting. With that being said, what are some of the most intriguing storylines? Obviously, we know a new head football coach, new staff. But when you look at some of the guys they have coming back, obviously some of the new recruits they're bringing in, what is a storyline or 2 that really stands out to you that you're most excited about?
Well, really, I think one of the biggest things is, what is Derek Mason's defense going to look like? I know he runs a lot of 3-4 stuff, but he's always been multiple in what he does. So really just how he's going to adapt his scheme to Auburn's personnel and what he thinks fits best and how everything's going to shape out over there. And then really just the wide receiver position. I mean, you look at what they're losing. They're losing Seth Williams. They're losing Anthony Schwartz. They're losing Eli Stove. Auburn has done a really good job of recruiting that position in recent years. We just haven't seen many of those younger guys, needed much the last couple of years just because of, that veteran-laden receiving core that they had. So it's going to be really interesting to see, who steps up at those positions and, how Bo Nix kind of builds his rapport with that.
Yeah, and lastly, speaking on Bo Nix, just kind of your overall thoughts on sort of where he is. A lot of people feel that he regressed last year and had some struggles, but, Brian Harsin is supposed to be the quarterback whisperer, someone that can really develop him. And I think obviously with spring ball this year, that's going to make a substantial difference, not only for Auburn, but every team out there that missed spring football. Just getting some of that face-to-face interaction, I think, will be more pertinent than ever heading into this season, especially for them. But just your overall thoughts on Bo Nix and what you think needs to happen for him to own the starting quarterback position outright and, be competitive this year.
Yeah, I think you hit on it there. He really, was impacted by the lack of no spring football last year because Auburn had a new offensive coordinator coming in, and he, had to learn that new system and, just build that relationship with Chad Morrison. He didn't have that opportunity in those reps in the spring. But, with spring practice this year with Brian Harsin, who's, been really noted for his work with quarterbacks, Mike Bobo, who's worked with some great quarterbacks in his career, I think everything is in position there for Bo Nix to take that next step. Especially when you have an offensive line that, it struggled a lot at times last year in pass protection, but you're bringing everybody back along that line. Theoretically that the offensive line should be better. And as long as he trusts that offensive line and has time to set his feet and, go through his reads, I think he should be able to take that next step this year.
Yep, no doubt. I agree with you. And certainly looking forward to seeing how things unfold again. Auburn starting things up for spring practice Tuesday, March 16th. They'll get about 15 practices in. And then, of course, their A-Day game, which we're still waiting to hear. That has not been announced yet. Is that correct, Tom?
Right. But I would bet on it being the Saturday of the Masters.
Saturday of the Masters. Yeah, that's typical. No doubt about it. All right, buddy. We appreciate you as always. Hope you have a good rest of your week. And of course, we know Gus Malzahn hired as the new head football coach at UCF. I just saw a video of him being landing there in Central Florida. So I imagine they'll have a press conference and introduce him later today. So I know we'll have updates on that from you as well. And we appreciate you as always. Y'all have a wonderful week. Bye.